So tonight's free webinar is Cut Technician, the evolving role of cut people in athletic boxing. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through various aspects of the role. And so it's just to enlighten you, to give you a better kind of better education on what it entails. And so for those involved in athletic boxing, or those who want to get involved in athletic boxing as a cut person, well, then it's a gem for you. So we'll continue. So brief history. Headgear was removed on June 1st, 2013. And the reason headgear was removed was because of the incident of concussion had risen since its introduction. So when headgear was removed, basically what happened was the laceration rate went up in athletic boxing. So that was down to timing and also distance. So a lot of fighters had gotten used, or boxers had gotten used to wearing headgear and jumping into range with shots. And therefore clashes of heads were quite common. But because they were wearing headgear, laceration rate was low, obviously, because they were protected by the helmet. But remove the helmet, the same issue arose in terms of jumping into shots, so range and distance, and then clash of heads, and then basically the laceration rate went up to around about 20% plus per AOB competition. So remember, this is an Olympic sport, and the last thing you want to do is present your sport like a butcher shop. So basically, off the back of headgear being removed, it was then realised by the executive committee and the then president Wu to introduce professionals, or to outsource professionals into athletic boxing. And the reason for that was quite simple, was to remove the blood from camera. In other words, the appearance of the sport, but also to learn from professionals, because this was a role they felt at that time needed to be embraced or definitely explored. And so basically to learn from us as well. So that was key to it. The system itself was quite foreign to most of us, in the sense that you had a one-time intervention. So you were allowed to treat for 45 seconds. And within that 45-second time frame, you would hear one tap to remind you it was 15 seconds, two taps to remind you it was 30 seconds, and three taps to remind you that it was 40 seconds and you'd 5 seconds remaining to treat. So again, it was quite alien to us. And this all happened during the round, not between rounds, during the round. So for me personally speaking, it was quite alien to have a doctor stand over me and supervise me. And again, by law, if you're using dangerous drugs, the likes of epinephrine, adrenaline 1:1000, same thing, that legally it's probably the only way that you can actually administer that drug under supervision from a healthcare practitioner. Anyway, for topical use, that is. But we'll get to that later on in the webinar. So quite alien, the system. But after Rio 2016, there was a meeting in Lausanne, Switzerland, whatever it is. I more to the English language every day, so today is no exception. 2017, and they brought in all the cutmen, which there were 5. Now, those 5 cutmen, some of them couldn't attend on the day, but basically we had to present presentation of a cut course, or a cutman, cutwoman course. And so out of those individuals, my course was in existence since 2009. It had longevity. It had the experience of doing so. My course was selected. So I'm very proud of that. And it was then implemented in terms of coaches courses and teaching courses how to administer corner care, or to at least create a gold standard in corner care in athletic boxing. Play it forward somewhat to today. The cut technician role has taken on a whole different spectrum of skills, in terms of now we work back of house and field of play. And our role is primarily to support coaches, but also to police and enforce rule. So that's the short version of it. So again, we'll cover more of that as we go along. Basically, some of the skills required for the cut technician role. So a cut technician should have the skill, experience and pedigree and technical knowledge to carry out the task at hand. Works within a budget to facilitate purchase of quality equipment. Manages cut teams and volunteers into roles which best suit their skill set and the task at hand. Design a workable floor plan which creates a flow from entrance to exit official charge or authority to serve an organisation in the manner in which best represents the interest of the athlete. The most important person. Can't reiterate that enough. The most important person. Sportsmanship and fair play. Encourage adherence to and enforcement of the rules and regulations, including reporting warnings, fouls and suspensions. Create a uniform health and safety standard for all athletes through corner care and education both on the field of play and the back of house. Support the athletic boxing community and provide educational seminars for athletes, athletic boxing. So my experience. So one of the skill set for the role of cut technician was obviously experience and the application of doing. So my experience, my background is as a physical therapist. I'm a registered healthcare practitioner within my own country, membership in Strength and Conditioning Association of the USA, and also as a certified strength and conditioning specialist. I design and lecture corner care on 6 continents, been doing so for since 2009, a Cutman for over the guts of 15 years, and membership in various, including the Irish Red Cross. Now, I've worked in various sports as a therapist, and equally my background is initially in athletic boxing. From the time I was a kid to professional boxing, I have been blessed to work with some really fantastic people, Willie Casey, the Highlands and various other. Same in MMA, introduced to MMA in 2011, been in practice as a professional since 2004 to 2011, and in 2011 I emigrated to Sweden, and doing so I met a guy called Andreas Michael. Andreas Michael introduced me to Alex Gustafsson. We then ran a training camp in Ireland, and so basically that was the catalyst for me to cross over into MMA. Met Andy Ryan because he needed rolling for Alex Gustafsson, and so basically through Andy Ryan and Team Rhino and Battle Zone, I worked in an event. Now at that time I'd went cold sales, knocking on MMA doors and trying to get working for free. And you've got to remember something as a rookie, when you're starting out you have to do cold sales. There are no shortcuts. I'm sorry, there aren't. And so I'd been quite established as a professional since 2004, and here I was starting all over again in 2011, 7 years later, doing cold sales for MMA, trying to get work in. So, and the reason I did it was because I could see that there were opportunities in MMA, whereas boxing has a history nearly 150 years old now. I'm talking about the purest form, boxing, since the Queensberry rules has been in history has been in circulation for that long, and has its rules set, and is a little bit archaic in some of the rules and regulations in terms of corner care for athletes. MMA is a whole different animal. It's constantly evolving. It's constantly looking to update. It's took the best of boxing rule and regulation and polished it up to suit MMA, but it's constantly moving, constantly flexible, and that's one of the reasons why I love it. By 2014, I pretty much established myself as the go-to guy for cut courses for cut men and cut women. And so my own national federation at that time, Billy Walsh was in charge, Zora Antia, they asked me to come across, well, Billy Walsh did, to train some of the coaches, which I did. And then after doing so, through Billy Walsh, I ran a cut course in Azerbaijan, and I worked on the World Series of Boxing with Azerbaijan Baku Forest 2014-2015. Won a silver medalist in the World Series of Boxing, and then went on to, through my connection with the World Series of Boxing and with ABA, I was then hired by ABA in that period of time from 2014 onwards, when they brought in Cutman, the executive committee and President Wu brought in Cutman to work with the organisation. I was one of those individuals. And so I've worked in many championships, European, World, Asian, etc., including the Olympics. In between, from my connections with MMA and Andy Ryan, I had worked diligently and really hard, and eventually got a show for the UFC through an old pal of mine, Bob Plant, and I'm blessed today to be still involved with them, the UFC. They're a fantastic company to work with. Not fantastic, the best in the world. I've also written programs for numerous organisations, including Athletic Boxing and ABA, Athletic International Boxing, and IMAF, International Mixed Martial Arts. I've written programs for multiple organisations for cut men and cut women, so I'd be quite educated on running systems and roles for those individuals. So, working within a budget. So part of your job, if you're working with an organization, is to acquire bandaging tape for the organization if they are facilitating coaches, which the majority of them do, including athletic boxing. So basically, if you turn up at an AOB athletic boxing event, basically the bandaging tape is provided, as is the boxing equipment. I mean the gloves and the headgear. So basically, working within the budget itself, part of our job or our specificity as cut people is working within those budgets, and also working with the organisations to get our hands or source quality bandaging tape. And so in order to work out the numbers or figures for a competition, you always work off the number of bouts that are in the competition rather than the number of boxers. So in other words, if 200 boxers signed up for a competition, that doesn't equal the number of bouts, and realistically the number of bouts is where it's at in terms of calculating the total number of bandaging tape for that event. So if we had 100 bout competition, that equals 200 boxers who will box over that 100 bout duration. So per boxer, the rules and regulations stipulate 2 rolls of 5 cm by 15 meters bandage, 2 rolls of 5 cm by 10 meters bandage, and 2 rolls of 2.5 cm by 14 meters of tape. Now, if I was to break that down for our friends in the US or Canada, that's 2 rolls of 2 inch by around about 14 yards of bandage, 2 rolls of 2 inch by roughly around about 9 yards of bandage, and then 2 rolls of 1 inch of around about 12 point something yards of tape. Okay. So that equals per competition, if you were to multiply that by the number of bouts, 400 rolls of 5 cm by 15 meters, 400 rolls of 5 cm by 10 meters, and the tape totals are 400 rolls of 2.5 cm by 14 meters. Now it's up there on the board, have a look at it yourself and work it out. Sorry, I'm not going to do the imperial version on the totals as well, but it was just to give you an idea. Now I could be wrong in the yardage, I just calculated in my head when I was making it up, but basically that's how you would calculate or work within, and then you can work out a budget in terms of how much it's going to cost and work within that company or organization's budget. So purchasing quality equipment. So that's key to our role. Previously, what happened, even before 2016, athletic boxing gloves were not made for professional hand wraps. So basically, the knuckle area of the glove is quite compressed to the actual hand itself, because the gloves themselves were made for Velcro hand wraps. So that was Velcro hand wraps. They were about 4.5 or 4.6 meters, if I'm correct, long, and they just fastened with a Velcro strap. And so basically there was very little padding across the knuckles. Equally, the wrist on them are quite thin on some pairs of gloves. So to get a pro hand wrap into these gloves is a nightmare. So since 2016, we've had nothing but issues with these gloves, and particularly with heavier men. There needs to be more technology and work put into acquiring gloves that now facilitate professional hand wraps. And so I'll give you just a small eyeball into some of the issues that we have with the gloves with the introduction of professional hand wraps. So I'll just play it on from there. So over on the right hand side is a hand wrap. Both are professional hand wraps, but we're going to focus on the one over here, just on this side. Okay. So the whole objective here is to get the hand into the glove. Okay, and you can see that's quite hard. So I'm going to stop that there. Okay, that's quite hard. And the reason for that, again, is the glove is not actually made for professional hand wraps. So that's the issue we're having consistently with athletic boxing gloves. So there needs to be more time and energy put into the research in terms of facilitating pro hand wraps, both in the wrist width and the knuckle padding area. Purchasing quality equipment is not only about the gloves themselves, but also about the bandage and tape. So sourcing quality bandage and tape is key to facilitating elite. Now remember, I'm going to underline the word elite athletic boxers, elite. So they deserve the best, right? And so all I'll say to you is, if you go into a barber's and you get a $3, €3, £3 haircut, that's exactly what you get. So don't be surprised if the result is not quite what you wanted. And the same goes for bandage and tape. Not all bandage and tape are equal. End of. Not all bandage and tape are equal. The beautiful thing about working with Empire, that's the hand wrap on the left hand side here I'm indicating. So if you look at the picture to the right, it's the hand on your left. Okay, see it here? It has the branded tape around the, you can see around the hand. And so the reason why I would work with people who have the experience of doing is because they've worked and have the technology of working with bandage or with tapes for over 10 years in industrial tapes, etc., etc. And so the quality of the tapes that they produce is absolutely unbelievable, heat resistant, etc., etc. It adheres to boxing gloves even when they're wet. They're just off the Richter Empire, so I can't recommend them enough. Equally, if you look at the width of their 15-meter rolls of bandage in comparison to a cheaply bought one, okay, you'll see that the circumference is much thicker, so the width is wider. Now, this adds to the problem of getting your hand into a boxing glove, particularly if you've been allocated a certain amount of bandage and tape per hand. So it works out around about 25 meters per hand. So in terms of yards, it'd be probably anything between 24, 26 yards, okay, of 2-inch. So basically the same goes for the tape, 13 meters by 2.5 centimeters. Now, if you look at the two rolls of tape, that's the picture on the left hand side, you'll see a roll of tape that's white on the right hand side here, and that's basically bigger than the one on the left. And the reason for that is that when they put the tape together, the materials that they put in were so the volume of it was thicker, obviously, and it's not so pliable when you try to apply it to the actual hand wrap itself. If the total amount of bandage and tape was used, okay, and the bandage is thicker in volume, and same goes for tape, well then the circumference and the thickness of the hand wrap is going to be bigger than that of an equal amount of bandage and tape that comes from a quality supplier. So you can see that this one is 15 meters also, but again, I'll reiterate, it's smaller. And so what you get is a much better hand wrap. The consistency of it is better, and it's smaller in terms of its circumference and padding. And so this all helps to get the hand in the boxing glove, and I'm going to prove it to you now by showing you a small short tape. So look at the picture of the video on the right hand side. You see Empire Pro tape is the one on the left, and the one on the right is completely white. Okay, so poor finish as well, like I say, the indentations. In comparison to that, okay, where you can get the hand completely in the glove. So same amount of bandage and tape, but the difference is getting your hand in the glove and struggling to get your hand in the glove. Now, why is that important? If you've got a kid that's going out there to box, right, the last thing you need is stressing that kid out by trying to get their hand into the boxing glove, right? That's the last thing you want to do. So again, I can't reiterate it enough. Spending a little bit extra on quality equipment goes a long way in terms of facilitating competitions. Managing cut teams and volunteers. Part of our role as a supervisory role is being able to best facilitate competitions with people who have the skill set to do so. Now, when working with cut teams, it's essential that if you're working on an event, you need people on the ground that have the experience of doing, and therefore your job becomes easier, and it's less resistance or less of a hassle in terms of being able to produce something in terms of your own performance, or in running something smoothly in terms of making something that should be quite simple very complicated, because you're dealing with people who don't actually understand what's required of them. So knowing people or having a source of people in different places. I'm blessed. I have a number of cut people on 6 continents that I can lean on, that can facilitate shows. Is a massive thing. So the cut game is not so, as a professional cut person, the cut game is all about keeping it here instead of sharing it, and there's good reason for that too. Obviously, some people take advantage of the fact you're sharing shows with them and try steal them from you. That's a fact. But other people are appreciative of the work and don't do that, and you will form good alliances with people through the years as you proceed in your career. So part of the deal of what we do is knowing how people best function. Okay, best function. So if you know the individuals on your cut team, then basically you can give them the work that best suits their skill set. And I'll break it down simply for you. If you're working back of house and you are hand wrapping, well, then you need people who have the experience of doing, but can produce a quality that's better than any coaches on the floor, and can do it in a time frame which, if you have a line of fighters to hand wrap, well, then they can bang them out all day long. So pro, it wrap a hand easily anywhere between 6 and 8 minutes. That's a fact, 6 and 8 minutes. So if you have a coach who turns up late to do the warm-up or prep, and you know they've only got 30 minutes before they walk, well, then basically it's probably a good idea that you wrap the hands. Now, as a supervisor, I can intervene and say to the coach, look, we let one of our guys do it. They can do it within a maximum 10 minutes. It takes the pressure off you. You have 20 minutes to warm up and get yourself prepped. So having the people that know how to do is a key thing, but the quality of it needs to be good, and then being able to do it within a time frame is good. So if you have individuals who are fast hand wrappers and can produce quality hand wraps, keep them in the back of house, because that's where their skill set would probably be better suited. Now, you're going to have all-rounders who can do both. But equally, if you have people that are not so good hand wrappers, but they're good working the field of play, in other words, that circular or that circumference around the ring, okay? If you know they're good working and supporting coaches and being able to facilitate a ring, in other words, they're quite competent in being able to treat injuries, etc., etc., well, then they're the people that you put outside. Now, again, you could have people who are universally good at that and have the skill set to do both. Fantastic. Well, you can rotate them around back and front, because you know that they're quality and you know you can lean on them regardless of which area you put them in. Now, throw the volunteers into the works. When you walk in various games, whether it's the Commonwealth Games or whether it's whatever organisation, what's key is that you find out how best facilitate those volunteers. So ask them what they want, because these are individuals that are turning up, giving free time to an event because they're either passionate about sport, probably not the sport that they are now assigned to. In other words, boxing. They probably come from, a hockey background, rowing background, football background, whatever it is, but they love sport and have volunteered that time and put their name down to volunteer for an event, and now you have them working with you. So you find out what what best suits them. Ask them what they would like to do. You may have people who are introvert, who don't like working in terms of as a runner, hustling the back rooms and dressing rooms, trying to find out where fighters are, bringing them up so you can process them for their equipment and get them ready for their prep before they box. Or put them in a better suited role, that introvert, into administration in terms of just receiving athletes and ticking their name off the list and making sure that they've come in and they are in the back of house. Then you have other roles that you can assign people, like athlete relations in terms of administering water and snacks and various other, whatever it is. But specific roles and jobs should not be given to volunteers, and I mean specific roles in the sense of working as a commissioner in back rooms or as a cut technician in back rooms, asking them to hand wrap, asking them to commission wraps. Now, if an individual has a boxing background and knows if somebody's volunteered but they have a boxing background and they have the skill set to do so, well, then and you can educate them on how to commission a hand wrap. They've been around the sport a long time, well, then there is absolutely no reason why they can't give you a handout in terms of signing off wraps if you feel they're competent to do so. So there's a flip over there. Now, I've been blessed to work with various volunteers on a lot of competitions, but I have to say Africa was one of my favorite. I'm going to show you a short video. On the right hand side we have Jordanian volunteers, male and female, and again it was probably one of the best events I've ever been involved in terms of the NOC, the LOC, being involved with a competition and bending over backwards to facilitate us and taking on an event within a 5-week time frame and running it so well. So big up to Jordan as well. So I'm just going to show you some of the roles that we give to some of the volunteers when they walk alongside of us. The African Olympic boxing qualifications in Senegal, Africa. Now, what I really loved about this, back of house is a key component, because if the back of house is the warm-up area, this is where we take athletes in. It's a commissioned area, policed area. We reduce the number of seconds back there, reduce the number of lineaments, various other and all the rest of it. But what's key to it is if the back of house slows down or doesn't work well, then the field of play, the ring, just absolutely grinds to a standstill. Some of the volunteers. Okay, Badu, amazing guy, fantastic. Worked in athlete relations. Sam B, he was our runner. Okay, very capable guy. We have Jules bringing it up. Administration, that's where he wanted to work and what he wanted to do. Then we've Jadadu, who was amazing. She helped me, again, very, very astute and intelligent. And this guy, Bashir, absolutely amazing. In terms of an equipment manager, working with him in the back of house, I turned up an hour before the boxers would turn up, and we would sit down and we would calculate how much boxing gloves in terms of 12 ounce and 10 ounce we needed for the event, and how much equipment in terms of bandaging tape. So without all of those people, I am nothing. So as Muhammad Ali always said, me, we. So without them, I'm nothing, because I couldn't have done it without those individuals. And again, Africa, what a beautiful experience. Africa, one of my favorite places, I have to say. They're so happy that you've come to their country to facilitate or put a platform on for an athletic sport and highlight the beautiful place that Africa is. I'll just leave it at that. Okay. Floor plans and volunteers, utilising your volunteers and your cut team to the best of your ability. So, here's the floor plan basically of Jordan Oman. And again, what you have to remember is that we had 226 bouts in this competition. So my job again was to facilitate. I've come from Senegal, Africa. We've organised the volunteers. We had a system. We seen where glitches were. We carried that forward to the next event. But hold on a minute, it's a whole different floor plan. We haven't got as big a space as we had in Africa. So the floor plan itself in Jordan was smaller. So we had to find a way that we could facilitate a large number of athletes being emptied off a bus into the back of house, and how we could best facilitate those individuals without cramping the area up and then making it a very unpleasant experience for the most important person, the athlete, and the coaches obviously as well, and ourselves. So at the door, if you look at the bottom right hand side of the floor plan, you'll see two smiley faces just in the doorway. Now these were our meet and greets. Now they had a role to play. So when the athletes got off the bus, so in other words, there was one wave of athletes came in at in the morning. It would probably work best if the transport system worked in waves, but sometimes you cannot trust the coaches and athletes to get on the bus. It may not be their fault. There may be confusion in terms of communication. So for this event and for other events that we worked, the athletes emptied into back of house, came off the bus. They were met by two volunteers, meet and greets, who then walked them into the male dressing room or the female dressing room. Okay, so these two individuals here at the doorstep, the bottom right hand corner of your picture, they basically met the athletes as they entered and ushered the males into the male dressing room, the females into the female dressing room. Now, as this is a small space, if you look at the top right hand side to, from center right all the way to the bottom, see where it says toilets on the bottom, you will see that it says back of house warm-up area, back of house warm-up area. Now this area was actually quite small, so we could only facilitate comfortably 4 athletes. Okay, so remember there was only one boxing ring, but we could only facilitate bouts 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that was 4 boxers from red corner, 4 boxers from blue corner, and 3 coaches per man or woman. Okay, so that's a really small place to warm up in. What was key to this is that we made sure that we got rid of their bags, except females. And because females, there was a smaller number. Thank you, Pedro. You organized this. One of the helpers, or one of the event, no, helpers, forgive me, Pedro, you're much more important than that. One of the organizers of the event manager, Pedro, we sat down and we tried to discuss the best way that we could create a flow for the athletes that would actually make it good in terms of entrance and exit. So as the athletes entered, they were ushered into the dressing rooms. They were told to leave bags there so the bags did not clutter into the back of house. We only let the first 4 bouts in, which is the equivalent of an hour before the card starts. Now remember, the boxers came in 2 hours before the event started. So we started wrapping hands within that time frame, within that 2-hour period. So we took in the first 4. Now, before the first bout walked, which was bout number 4, okay, as the whole bus had emptied here, and we could have had 10 to 12 bouts on a card, the excess, in other words, from bout number 4 onwards, we emptied into athlete waiting area. And if you look at the top right hand corner here, this is where the excess sat. So from bouts 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it was a 10 bout card. This is where the excess of athletes sat with their coaches. Okay. So when bout 1 was about to walk, we called in bout 5. When bout 2 was about to walk, we called in bout 6, and so on and so forth. And the reason we did it was to keep the numbers in the back of house down. Now this is key to making it comfortable for coaches, but particularly for the most important person, the boxer. Okay, because we wanted to make it a pleasant experience. And so we could not facilitate larger numbers in this area. So it's key to you as a cut technician to get the floor plan before you start and work out and arrive there days before the event itself. Sit down with the volunteers. If you don't have that option, if your flight arrives the day before the event, well, expect chaos the next day, because that's exactly what's going to happen. But a little bit of prep and a little bit of before thought goes a really long way and making the flow of the back of house so good. Okay, and it removes all the stress. And I have to say, from day 1 in Jordan, we hit the ground running, because we were there 2 days before the event. We had time to practice with the volunteers. We worked out systems. We talked with the event managers, the LOC, the NOC, and we developed a floor plan that worked extremely well. Now, why is it important that they talk to cut technicians? Because we're the people that wrap hands in the back. Now remember, laying out chairs like so, there were 4 and 4 like so, took up space to warm up. Okay, took up space to warm up. But basically all we could facilitate at that time were 4 athletes at any one time. So that was the reason the 4 chairs were laid out. And we could only, the volume of individuals in the back of house, we could only facilitate that number. And it worked out extremely well, because we prepped and we'd ran through, we'd had run-throughs with the volunteers. So we had practice runs. So that's the reason it worked. And it's key that you get a hold of the floor plans before you go and work a competition. That's being professional. That's the reason you're being leaned on as a cut technician supervisor. Promoting fair play and a level playing field. Fair play and a level playing field means acting in an equitable manner in which to pursue victory, and acting towards others in an honest, straightforward and dignified manner, even if they do not. Everyone has a fair and equal chance of succeeding. That's key to promoting the most important person, which is the boxer themselves. A lot of the times when people run competition, what basically happens is sometimes the most important person gets sidelined because we're too busy running the event. We've missed the reason why we're there in the first place, which is to provide a platform for those individuals. And I'll go back to Muhammad Ali again. He said, me, we. He said, without the fans, without the people, without the podium, without the platform, I would be nothing. So again, a lot of intelligence in 2 words. So that's something I live by when I run events. Okay. Adherence to the rules and regulations. One of the sticking points for me, uh, in my experience working back of house as a cut technician for athletic boxing, has always been massage oils, liniments, eucalyptus, grade 2 irritants, grade whatever. And the reason I have a gripe with it, and the same with boxing, is because human behavior dictates the rules and regulations, really. Human behavior. And we put the rules and regulations in place to put some kind of direction to the sport and also to confine it within certain parameters, right? Now, using liniments on body parts is okay if those liniments don't end up on the end of your gloves or forearms where they can go into your eyes. But unfortunately, that's exactly what happens. And my experience with human behavior is when then opportunists get the opportunists take advantage of those oils and sometimes put them over the top of gloves or put them on forearms where that forearm may be used and brought up into the face or the eyes, in which case then it's painful and it stings your eyes, which then causes your eyes to blink. You lose sight of your opponent and therefore you may be hit. So removing that from the sport was one of those things that just stuck out to me like a sore thumb, particularly in back of house. The back of house is a prep, a warm-up area. It's not an area for physiotherapists to be treating people, to do core work on the floor. It's a warm-up area. I know every athlete has their own method of doing stuff, but doing planks in the middle of a floor where you're a trip hazard, where people are trying to warm up around you, I question its role in warm up and a dynamic warm up for an athlete who's going to take part in an event which is aerobic anaerobic. I just primarily anaerobic. It just blows my mind when I see people doing that. So what we tried to do in the back of house was limit the amount of coaches and also take to 3 coaches per athlete, and also take away the things that may have been used as fouls or methods of getting advantage on your opponent, and liniments and oils were definitely one of those. The only place that grease should be applied, that petroleum jelly, if you are using that, or buttermilk, is basically cocoa butter, is basically around the eyes in a figure of 8. Okay, in a figure of 8, and the nose, of course. That's the only place that grease should be applied. In boxers, you see it going around the back of the neck, you see it on the lips, you see it on the chest, torso, all around the arms and down the legs. And like I said to you, if it was just grease, again, the rules that clearly states that it's around the contours of the face, which is a figure of 8 around the eyes and nose, nowhere else. And we've just took liberties, or people have just took liberties with our coaches have. So again, the reason we have that rule is because of you coaches. That's the reason we had to put in some parameters or rules and regulations so that that oil doesn't end up, liniments, eucalyptus, whatever it is, doesn't end up in the end of the gloves and going into your boxer's eyes. Adherence to rules and regulations is key. Okay, adherence to rules and regulations, like I've stated in the last slide. Part of that is abuse, whether that's abuse to other people on the floor, verbal abuse, physical abuse, zero tolerance, absolutely zero tolerance. Remember, the whole ethos is fair play, and what you're trying to do is create a level playing field for all. And if you have people in a room who are louder, who take up a lot of space with their personality, it may be uncomfortable for other people around you. So just be mindful of the people that are in the room, and you are not the most important person. The athlete is the most important person, and what we're trying to do is create an environment, not just for one athlete, but for all athletes on the floor, regardless if you're an Olympic champion or you're a debutant. Doesn't matter who you are. So abuse, physical or verbal, never goes down too well with volunteer staff, members of the cut team, or coaches to coaches, or coach to boxer. It just never goes down too well. So again, please adhere to the rules and regulations in terms of verbal and physical abuse. In terms of the other stuff, if you look at the picture here in the top middle, you'll see that there's a syringe extracting fluid from an ampule. And so basically what's happened since the introduction of Rule 1623, so ampules of adrenaline have been, or epinephrine have been brought into the back rooms. And so then some coaches and doctors then have extracted the fluids in the back of house. This is not the place for that to happen. This is your prep time. You should have had that done before you got there. Okay. I know what people say when you crack open the adrenaline, then basically it's better used at that point in time. So the closer to the event that you open the adrenaline, obviously it's better, particularly if it's in ampules. But listen, go do it somewhere else. Equally, you shouldn't be using the damn stuff in the first place because legally you're not allowed to unless you're a healthcare practitioner. Anyway, I'll move on from that. Violation notice. So basically between that and then I've equally seen doctors suture boxers in the back of house. Again, that's not the place for it. There are designated areas where you can walk in a medical room and you can do that job. You don't have to do it in the back of house. Okay. Energy drinks. Caffeine is legal now. It's not on the banned substance list, but some of the substances that are in your energy drink may be. Now, the thing is, we commission the floor. You ask us, caffeine is legal, why can't we drink? It's simple for us. If you look at the bottom center picture, if we've got a catalogue, or if we have a catalogue of cans and coloured waters all over the floor, we have no idea what's in them. We're there to commission and police. That area is a sacred area. It's the prep area before you walk onto the field of play. The only stuff you should bring into back of house is the stuff that you're going to bring onto the field of play, except for your focus pads. You bring the necessary to warm up the athlete. Remember, the gloves are supplied in back of house, so therefore you cannot, or you're not permitted to bring your own. The gloves will be supplied in back of house. So all you need is your focus pads and the equipment you're going to bring to the ring. Okay, on the field of play. Energy drinks not allowed, not at all, not ever. And the reason for that is there's bottled water supplied and snacks. We supply them. That's the only stuff you have on the floor. End of story. You keep on telling us it's in the rules, you can use it. Go use caffeine in your own time, in your own place, but don't do it in back of house. It's not that caffeine is again, it's off the banned substance list. It's just if we've got a multitude of different coloured cans with all sorts of this and coloured waters and this and that and all over the floor, it's too hard to commission. We don't know what's in them. We don't know what the ingredients are in those drinks. The thing is, it is a commissioned area. Please obey the rules. If you're not allowed to bring them onto into the field of play, you're definitely not allowed to use them in the back of house because it's your prep area before you walk onto the field of play. Now, if you do violate the rules, you'll get one warning. Depending on the severity, you could get an immediate suspension depending on the severity of your actions. In other words, depending on the severity of your actions or what you've done. If you've got into a physical altercation, you're gone. It's simple as that. Now, the warnings, what was unique about the warning system or the rules and regulations that we brought into play is that we have a system now where you get one strike or one warning, and then after that a suspension. Now, if you're suspended for 1 day, again, depending on the violation, okay, what it is. If it was something, again, a physical altercation, you could be gone for the whole event. Now, what happens then for future events? Well, we're carrying those warnings onto the next event and the next event. So if you pick up a warning beforehand, you come into the next event and you get another warning, you're suspended for 1 day from back of house and field of play. This is the only way we can enforce rule and regulation in back of house. Now, what previously happened in back of house, probably because the equipment managers went through a protocol of checking your vest, your shorts, your boxing glove, your equipment and all that kind of stuff. It was really a box ticking activity rather than having seasoned commissioners on the floor or people who know the game, and then basically making sure that behavior and that individuals on that floor weren't taking up too much space by their personalities, if you know what I mean. And then basically each and every individual felt comfortable in that dressing room. There weren't entourages of teams, like one team comes in with 7 people. So we've limited the numbers down to 3 in the back of house with any one athlete. The maximum number of coaches in back of house for any one team are 6. So if you have a multitude of athletes, who've come in to prep and warm up who are on the card, well then basically the maximum number of coaches you can have is 6. Minimum is, well, you can have 3 per athlete, but maximum of 6. So that's the simple way of doing it. So because teams walked in with entourages beforehand, which were difficult for us again because they took up a lot of space, and that space could have been given to other team members. So please bear with us. It's for your benefit. Again, transition and change takes time, and it makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable because you haven't. We try to educate and hand those rules and regulations out to people, but not everybody reads them, or maybe it's not their language, or maybe the interpretation of it into their language doesn't quite fit the context in which it was written in the first place. But we're here, lean on us. Rather than bawling us out and giving us a hard time, speak, communicate. That's the best way of going forward for everybody. So, creating a uniform health and safety standard for athletes through corner care. Education is key. It's the only way we can do this. So, cut courses for coaches should be mandatory, particularly if you're handling wound care or handling bloody matter. So, the whole purpose of the cut course is to teach coaches how to treat wounds within that time frame, that 60-second time frame between rounds. Okay, so that's the reason it's there for. But it also covers a multitude of other modules, including concussion, hygiene, sanitation, various other, and all the rest of it. Another area that should be mandatory for coaches, again, should be first aid. First aid, it's a no-brainer, particularly if you're handling or working with wounds. First aid should be mandatory. Hygiene, sanitation, cross-contamination, what does that mean exactly? Well, if you're handling bloody matter, how many times have you seen coaches get into the ring? And what we've done in athletic boxing, in a way, is inherited 150 years of bad habits from professional boxing. Professional boxing, I could count on my hand the amount of times I've seen professional coaches get in and handle gum shields and wounds without actually any gloves whatsoever. And in this day and age, it's just not acceptable. Come on, wake up, smell the coffee. Seriously. So hygiene, cross-contamination, and coaches have said, well, I haven't infected anybody. How the hell do you know? And why do you think surgeons wear gloves? Why do you think they wear 2 pairs of gloves? To protect themselves and to protect the individual. Okay, when you take a set of gloves out of a package and you put them on your hands, they're no longer hygienic. But what you're doing is you're creating a barrier between you and the fighter. Okay, if you change the gloves, if the fighter is bloodied in round 1 and you treat that wound, well, then you dispose of those gloves and wear another pair of gloves for round 2. But you never put your hands in your kit while your hands are bloody. Ever. But it's key. And the reason we do that is to stop the spread of cross-contamination. Okay, through bloods or through through bloods. For example, wearing and changing glove is key, and disposing of biohazard waste in biohazard waste bags and then being disposed of by the emergency services who attend those events is key. And again, the reason we're doing this is to create a standard, a gold standard for coaches to pass down to who? The most important person. The most important person, which is the athlete. Wearing gloves, not only wearing gloves, but actually getting the education on wound care and first aid. Mandatory. Has to be. It's common sense. But sometimes common sense isn't common. So, uniform health and safety standards, which also cross over into the substances that we use to treat injuries. Now, each and every one of you live in a country which has laws, and those laws dictate what we can and can't do, right down to medications. Okay, so some of the substances that we're using, and particularly Rule 16.2.3, has always been a personal gripe of mine. Because why? Because as a healthcare professional, I work within a constitution. And within that constitution, there are rules and regulations which clearly state that I cannot administer or prescribe prescription drugs to a third party. I can't. It's not part of my ethos. Although I'm a healthcare professional, it's not within the circumference of my work. It's just I can't do it. Okay, now, as an ordinary Joe or Josephine, so can you do it? No, you can't. There are certain circumstances in which you can. Now, what I'm making reference to here specifically is adrenaline 1:1000 or epinephrine. So if we're creating a level playing field, we need to abide by the laws of your country, which we're governed by. And in terms of those laws, they clearly state that a bystander, Joe and Josephine soap, ordinary Joe and Josephine, cannot acquire a prescription drug and administer it to a third party as they like without any dose or without any prior knowledge knowledge of the health history of the individual, or without acquiring any healthcare certification in which they have the knowledge and know how to do so. The problem is we do it all day long as cut people. Okay, see that drug? Adrenaline 1:1000 epinephrine is a dangerous drug. And not only is it a dangerous drug used intramuscularly for anaphylactic shock or intravenously for the likes of cardiac arrest and various other and all the rest of it, it should not be used in its use for wounds in corner care or topical use for wounds in corner care. The context of its use and who it's used by is not clearly stated, but again, we're breaching or breaking the rules and regulations of our own countries and our country's laws. It's clear. Then let's just leave that drug to one side for a second. Okay, so the legal classification of the drug is prescription only medication. Method of obtaining the drug is through your GP, through prescription, who he gives to you to use for symptoms that you've shown. In other words, if you suffered from anaphylactic shock through eating peanuts, or you had asthma or something like that, they may then prescribe you an EpiPen, which you would use intramuscularly. So it's like a one-time shot. You hit, you put it into the muscle, and you hit. Okay, like so. And so basically that's the context in which it's used, intramuscular use. And again, intravenous use, in other words, into the vein, that would be a whole different ball game, and that would be, in our country, an advanced paramedic who's specifically trained to do so. Now, the pharmacy is the place that you would prescribe that, or you would get your prescription, right? The application of the drug should be only administered in GP surgeries, community pharmacies, and last but not least, in a patient's home, or the Good Samaritan law, in which case somebody is suffering from anaphylactic shock, they've eaten peanuts, they're starting to have an allergic reaction to it, and then basically they're carrying an EpiPen. An ordinary bystander can then use that EpiPen, but nowhere does it state that you can prescribe and administer a dangerous drug with any dose to a third party. Nowhere does it suggest that you can do that. Okay, so again, the drug itself may be metabolized topically. If you're using it topically, it may be metabolized very, very fast. But the point is, in terms of governance, in terms of law, unless they bring in a situation where they provide training for coaches and they make an exception to the rule, in that context, well, then we're still, until that day comes, we're breaking the law right now. Now, again, let's go back to the level playing field. How come, if you were living in a developing country, do you think you could afford to acquire a drug like so? And the rule 1623, it has adrenaline, thrombin, it has microfibrillar collagen, it has a whole array of hemostatic agents which stop bleeding. Okay, can you afford them now? Probably in a Western country you could. If you're working with a big enough organization or team, they probably pay for them. The doctor probably has them. Maybe he's the cut person working on the team. But the thing is, in some countries, say if you're buying 10 ampules of adrenaline 1:1000 epinephrine, okay, that may cost you $25 to $30 in Western Europe, okay. But if you're in the States, that same quantity of drug may cost you up to $300, or if you were in a different part of the world, it may cost up to $300. Now imagine you're from a developing country. Like $30 is massive. $300, forget about it. So are we creating a level playing field? So what's the solution? There are two solutions to this. The first one being that we now remove the rule. Get rid of the rule 1623 and replace it with one or two hemostats max to treat, which are not prescribed. There are absolutely amazing trauma kits out there at the moment that you can now use. And when I say trauma kits, they have hemostatic agents like the likes of Quick Aid. Quick Aid is a phenomenal product which you can use in open lacerations and wounds. There are various other out there, Quick Clot, oxidized cellulose, and various other. But the thing is, alginate has been proven not only for its absorption rate, but in terms of blood clotting has been shown to be quite good, and it works within a time frame which may suit the sport of boxing. And then for nosebleeds, the likes of nasal wool, again another alginate. Its absorption rate is good, but it also releases calcium ions, which helps stop the bleeding and form blood clots. Do any of them have really negative effects? No. Are they prescribed? No. Can you access them anywhere in the world? Yes, you can. You can buy them on Amazon, various other, and all the rest. So are they expensive? You would pay about $5, $6 for 1 square. How many squares would you need for one competition? In other words, one bout. Because it's only 3 rounds, you would only probably need 1 to 2 patches. Okay, 1 to 2 pieces. So accessibility is good. Prescription not required. Are they safe to use? Yes, they are. Contraindications to use. Well, you just don't use them when the wound is dry. In other words, when there's no blood. Well, that's self-explanatory if you're treating a wound, right? So that's the solution. So part of the job in terms of health and safety standards are monitoring the field of play, but also before the fighter leaves the back of house and have their gloves wrapped. If you look at the picture on the left hand side, if you see the tape around the outside of the gloves, this is quite dangerous. See the way the tape is creased? When you've got creases like that in a tape, the potential for it to harm are greater in terms of you threw a hook and it came across your face, it may cause abrasions and even cuts, and particularly across the eye. So that's quite dangerous. So for us as cut technicians, monitoring what leaves the back of house is key in terms of the equipment. But also, if you flip over to the picture on the right hand side, you'll see stacking across knuckles. Now sometimes this is cultural, and you'll find that in Asian countries, and particularly where the sport of Muay Thai is in practice, you will find that it's quite common for coaches to put a welt or a thick layer of zinc oxide across the knuckles, making it a hard solidified substance, in which case who receives that? The opponent does, because you're hitting somebody with a hard object which can be felt through a glove. Now part of our job as a cut technician is checking the hand wraps at the end of an event to make sure that every hand wrap is basically commissioned properly. Now here's the catch-22. If you're working in an event or working with an organization and they can't afford an appropriate number of officials to monitor back of house because they don't really understand the role of back of house or the role of commissioner and how important that is in terms of protecting the athlete, well then, if you're the only commissioner on the floor and you're working with volunteers, you can try educate the volunteers to the best of your ability, but you do not ask the volunteers to step in and intervene if they see something. Rather, they should come to you, make you aware of it, and you can check it out. Okay, so there are solutions to it in some shape, form, or fashion. However, having the appropriate number of officials in the back of house and on the field of play is key to making the event run really smoothly and flawlessly. Stacking across the knuckles is quite dangerous. So basically, if I'm the only commissioner and there are 20 athletes on the floor with coaches, it's very hard for me to monitor every hand wrap. Now, although that athlete comes to me and I sign off that hand wrap, I may feel the hand wrap to see if the consistency and the quality, to see if there's any hard objects in it, to make sure that the appropriate amount or length and width of bandaging tape has been used, although impossible to commission correctly because you're walking around the floor constantly, but you would have a feel of the wrap. Now, can you miss stuff? Of course you can. If the fighter then goes and boxes and the boxer then leaves the field of play after the result, then what we do, just as a safety net, is when they go in, it's mandatory for every athlete to go in and get a post-bout medical. When they go in for the post-bout medical, what happens is we remove those hand wraps, put them all in a bag, and because we have a specific signature or a specific way of signing off hand wraps in terms of the session number, the bout number, the country code, it's a 3-letter code, etc., with your signature on it, or the coach's initials on it, well then you basically can trace that hand wrap back to the individual who applied it. Okay, so very important. And we have found a number of hand wraps in competitions which are illegal, which are made to harm. So that's part of our job as a cut technician. Right. Supporting and educating the athletic boxing community. Okay. The reason we do what we do, we turn up for per diem. Okay. We don't get paid as officials when we turn up to facilitate, to provide a platform for the athlete. We don't get paid as such. We get a per diem. So that's for expenses or expenditure during the day. In other words, washing or whatever you need to get done, or small treats you may want for your room, your hotel room, or something like that. But it definitely is not a salary. Okay, we do it because we love it. We love it. And so supporting and educating and giving back to the sport is one of the greatest gifts I've been ever given in through educational programs like Cook Course and stuff like that. And I don't always do them for money. I do them pro bono, as I have done in Africa and various other countries. And the reason we do it is because if we can educate the coaches on best practice for corner care, well then who benefits? The most important person. That's the reason me and you are here. And hopefully that's the reason you're watching. And hopefully I can educate you on that. But for me, I have to say, it's brought me to every corner of the planet. And in doing so, it's given me a greater sense of how similar we all are, regardless of culture, regardless of religion, regardless of where you're from on the planet. We're all very similar. And there are differences, obviously, between us, but those differences are small in terms of what we want as human beings. Is quite similar. And what boxing does is cross over those bridges and barriers and boundaries, and it brings us all together. And I feel privileged that I have the opportunity to walk alongside of you guys. If I've walked with you guys and girls before, I feel privileged for the opportunity to stand there in front of you and share something with you. And the reason I do it is for the athlete. The only reason I do it is for the athlete. The only reason. So again, I feel blessed. So for you people who are involved or want to get involved, remember, you are not doing this for money. You're doing this for the love of it. Okay, for the love of it. Can't reiterate that enough. And like I said, it's brought me to places that I never would have seen. Some are good, some of them are not so good. But I've met people who will be friends and still message me today, years after I've been to their country. And likewise, and I feel a part of their life and they feel a part of mine. So I feel truly blessed. Lastly, stay home and stay safe. We're living in very unusual times, and I wish you, each and every one of you, the best for your family's health. Our mothers and fathers, our neighbours, the older population, special populations, or those who are sick or needy, underprivileged. It's a time where we should unify and help each other, respect each other's distance. Now, social distancing is key, but importantly, if there's a good thing that comes out of this, I hope it's a sense of community, or I hope it's a sense of well-being, because we've took so much for granted. We're now isolated, alone, and insular. We are now probably experiencing what other people experience every day in other countries where they don't have the freedom of speech or whatever it is. But together we have the opportunity to turn a corner, come out of this and do something for our communities, which will forever be remembered. God knows we'll never forget this. I wish each and every one of you the best of health. I wish you the best, and I hope, regardless of whatever happens next and where we end up after this, that you all stay healthy and well. Until then, God bless and take care of yourself.